Hey guys, it's Jsnow with the Spirit King, the fourth boss in Mogu'shan Bolts, and the first boss in the Looking for Raid version of Mogu'shan Bolts. So the first boss you're going to get is Xan the Merciless. Now he has a couple of attacks. His first one that's going to be shown here is called Flanking Orders. So he's going to summon about 5 guards in a row, and they're going to walk across the field. Now all you have to do is move to the side, and you won't take any damage from him. His second attack is Massive Attacks, which is a frontal cone attack that will deal a ton of damage, but is split among players that are affected in front of him. So on Raid Finder difficulty, it only does about 250,000 damage, I think, altogether. So really, all you have to do is have both tanks stand in front of him, and he should be good to go. Of course, if your raid wants to help out by standing in front of him, you can, but people will probably just yell and whine because it's Raid Finder. And his last attack is Annihilate, where he'll put a huge AoE on the ground. You'll see it, the huge animation that looks like an earthquake, and just step out of the way of that. Once this guy dies, you'll go on to the second boss, and the only ability he'll keep while he's dead is the Flanking Orders attack, where the 5 guards or 6 guards will come walking across the field. That will last throughout the fight as long as he's dead. So the second boss we got, and this is also not in order, the bosses can come at a different order. So the second boss we got was Mang the Demented. So this guy's a really interesting spell. He gains stacks like Rage, and he has 2 abilities, one called Crazed, which increases his physical damage by 200% on tanks, and Cowardice, that reflects damage back to the raid, but it really isn't that much damage. His main ability is what happens right this second, Maddening Shout. This makes almost all players turn against each other, and what you have to do is deal 20,000 damage to each player to remove the mind control. So this could be easily done by stacking together, and it's pretty easy just by doing AoE. So we got a pretty bad example of when it happened. It happened during the other boss's ability, where he summoned the guards rushing at us. So while we were all mind controlled, he also had a whole bunch of guards coming at us while everybody was mind controlled. So if anybody gets mind controlled and they run to the side, make sure you go out of your way to actually do 20,000 damage to them. Because in this raid group we had, a lot of people weren't actually killing all the mind controlled, so I had to run across the map and get the rest of the people. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Maddening Shout is a little crazy to deal with, but it really depends on how many bosses you killed, on how bad it's going to be. So since this was our second boss, it was actually pretty hard because we had Maddening Shout throughout the whole entire fight. It's probably best if you get this guy last, but it's completely random. On to the third boss. The third guy we got, Subtitled Swift, is pretty easy. He uses Pillage, which reduces damage and healing them by 50% to random players for about 15 seconds, but they do 50% extra damage. Volley, which is just an AoE you have to avoid. You'll see a bunch of raining arrows raining from the sky. Just avoid that. And last is Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows has arrows that pins random players to the floor. So whoever gets hit by rain of arrows, you must destroy these arrows in order to free them. Otherwise, they'll start taking stacking damage and they'll eventually die. So on this phase of the fight, just make sure you kill the rain of arrows and stay out of the AoEs. Pretty simple. So on to the fourth boss. And for the final boss, Xan of Shadows, he has 3 abilities. One, Undying Shadows, where he'll summon a shadowy orb that will chase a random player around the map. You have to kill that orb. Once that orb is killed, it will leave a big spot on the ground that you don't stand in, and that spot on the ground after 30 seconds will eventually form back into the orb and chase another random player, and it'll basically be rinse and repeat. And this ability does last, and even if the boss is already dead and you're fighting other bosses. Otherwise, uses Shadow Blast, which can be interrupted and does damage to players within 8 yards. And the final ability is Charged Shadows, which is a spell that deals tons of damage, and it bounces from players within 8 yards of each other. So if you spread out, you'll avoid a ton of the damage. Otherwise, that's pretty much it to the fight. It just really depends on which bosses you get first and which boss you get last. So we got the worst case scenario with the bosses, the harder ones coming first and then the easier ones coming last. Then I also DC'd twice on this fight, and as you can see, we lost a ton of players due to random DCs and server instability. Otherwise, mostly an easy fight. And here's a great example of me and the orb. So that's the orb you actually gotta run away from, and just make sure you're away from the raid when you're kiting it. Otherwise, that's it. If you like this video, please thumbs it up. I'll be doing the next 2 boss guides soon. I already have done the other 3 boss guides, so you can check those out too. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, thumbs it up. And I'll see you guys next time.